Remains began his origin story monologue recounting the tale of a young scientist who discovered that universes were stacked on top of each other. While the scientist and his many variations would go on to take a wide variety of comic booky names, the first name he went by was Nathaniel Richards. There is little doubt that we will see the moment where Nathaniel makes his grand discovery and then realizes that dozens, if not hundreds, more of himself were making that discovery at the exact same time. Who knows, the specific scientist He Who Remains was referring to could end up becoming an ally for our heroes, who still goes by the Nathaniel Richards name. They might even acknowledge the fact that Nathaniel has long been suspected of being a descendant of not only Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, but also his arch-nemesis, Dr. Doom. I mean, with those genes running through your veins, it's no wonder every version of the guy became a narcissistic super genius. Poor guy's never had a chance. While it would be cool to see every other Nathaniel Richards variant, there's only one that we really want to see, and that is, of course, Kang the Conqueror. If you're not up on your Avengers comics, Kang is on the same level as foes like Ultron, Thanos, and Baron Zemo. He uses his futuristic technology to travel through time, space, and alternate realities to conquer them all, like if Napoleon was crossed with Rick Sanchez and Doctor Who. Actually, putting it that way, I'd say he's above those three. He's pretty hardcore. Anyway, considering the fact that we will no doubt see dozens of Kangs all competing against each other to prove who is the Kangest of them all, the MCU timeline's Kang will likely be Kang Prime. I imagine Ant-Man and the Wasp will introduce the version of Kang that is meant to be the primary antagonist of Phases 4 and 5. Expect to see him kicking back in his time chair, relaxing as superheroes find themselves fighting through one of his many deadly traps. The only question we have after seeing Jonathan Majors in a loose-fitting Kang costume is, will he be blue? It might be strange-looking, but is Kang even Kang if he isn't blue? The other Nathaniel Richards variant that gets a ton of time in the comics is the character who is supposedly Kang's future self, Immortus. At some point in Kang's life, he grows weary of all the conquering and Avenger fighting. He then gets hired by the alien timekeepers to stop conquering timelines and start maintaining them instead. There are a ton of fans out there who think that Immortus is He Who Remains, which, you know, is a solid guess. I think, however, that He Who Remains was referring to Immortus when he was talking about that multiversal conflict threatening to wipe out the timeline. If we think of it in terms of factions, it's likely that Kang will be on one side of the clash, while Immortus is on the other. Unfortunately, our heroes are likely to find themselves sandwiched right in the middle.
Sandwich.
Strangely enough, Kang wasn't the first version of Nathaniel to appear in Marvel Comics. Nathaniel Richards came from a time of peace, which he found, well, incredibly boring. Instead, he was obsessed with the heroic age of heroes like the Fantastic Four, so he decided to use Dr. Doom's time travel technology to go back to that era. Instead, he was flung into ancient Egypt, where he used his genius to conquer the people and become the pharaoh Rama-tut. While heroes like the Fantastic Four saved Egypt from Rama-tut, motivating him to become Kang instead, eventually Nathaniel got wistful for this era of his life. Eventually, he decided to retire to his ancient Egyptian kingdom, taking on the name Rama-tut once more. I'm not really sure where the MCU will find time to visit ancient Egypt, but there's a solid chance that the Turtles may cross paths with him since they are also interlopers in ancient human history. If there's one complicated variant of Kang we're destined to see a lot of, it's the superhero Iron Lad. Young Nathaniel Richards discovered his terrifying future after Kang tried to interfere in his own timeline. Young Nathaniel then decided to change his future by going into the past and becoming the superhero Iron Lad. What can I say? Comics are confusing. He's a founding member of the Young Avengers, a team that the MCU has been setting up for years. Of course, this doesn't end up going his way, and he eventually accepts his destiny, even briefly becoming the villain, Kid Immortus. My guess is that he will make his first appearance in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. He and Cassie Lang have a romance in the comics that I'm sure the MCU will explore in detail. Whoa, get your mind out of the gutter, not that much detail. After Nathaniel grows tired of his Rama-tut identity, he becomes inspired by Dr. Doom to become a time-traveling supervillain known as the Scarlet Centurion. His great plan was to create a divergent timeline and use the Avengers as his pawns to conquer the modern age. As far as plans go, this is one of his best. I don't know about you, but I think it would be incredible to see the Centurion lead variants of the original Avengers against the inevitable new Avengers, led by Sam Wilson's Captain America. Which, that sounds like the most expensive thing in the whole world.
$1 billion!
After a lifetime spent conquering timelines, ruling ancient Egypt, controlling the Avengers, and battling against alternate versions of yourself, it's only natural to crave a quieter life. For Kang, his life as Victor Timely is about as quiet as it gets. After one of his many defeats, Nathaniel decided to set up shop in 20th century America. He posed as Victor Timely and started the town of Timely, Wisconsin. He then replaced himself with a robot that would live as Timely and age appropriately. After that, he would return as Victor Timely Jr., Victor Timely III, and so on. The town served as the base for Timely Industries, a successful tech company. In the wake of Tony Stark's fall and Justin Hammer's imprisonment, we have no idea what tech companies have risen to fill the void. It is entirely possible that Timely Industries will be a part of the armor wars Rhodey will find himself in later on in Phase 4. It's a law of the universe that if you travel through dimensions that you have to form a council of other versions of yourself. Long before Rick and Morty's Council of Ricks or the Flash's Council of Wells, Kang the Conqueror had his own council of all the different Kang variants. This is probably too weird of a concept to see in an Avengers movie, but there's little, oh right, there's that Doctor Strange scene where with the fingers coming out of the face. You know what, never mind, it's probably not that weird. Anyway, there's little doubt that Loki will see himself impersonating a Kang to infiltrate the Kang Council. I mean, that episode just writes itself. There's also a second council called the Council of Cross-Time Kangs that was made up of aliens and humans who took on the Kang moniker. They were soundly destroyed by the monster Alioth. Seeing Alioth wipe out a whole other sect of Kangs would certainly put into perspective just how great the threat to the MCU really is. Several years ago, no one would think a silly character like Kangaroo the Conqueror would ever make it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was before the internet fell in love with the greatest Loki variant of them all, Alligator Loki. There's no doubt now that we will likely see a kangaroo in the background of the Kang Council. Of course, the greatest version of this would be if Alligator Loki went up against Kangaroo the Conqueror. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that would be the greatest showdown in the MCU. Now I'm pretty sure that once the dust clears over the Kang saga, the Kang left standing will be the same one we met when this all started. I bet we see He Who Remains start the TVA once again to prune the timelines so that Kang, Immortus, the Scarlet Centurion, and the most dangerous of them all, Kangaroo, can no longer wreak havoc across the multiverse.